welcome to the Kaiju is in the Details. I'm Ian.
I'm Haru.
And this time, we watched the same movie again, but different.
Americanized.
Godzilla 1956. Or Godzilla King of the Monsters is another way to differentiate it. What'd you think of this one?
It was... It had some good moments, but those were the same good moments from the original.
I will say I am not going to 100% bash this version of the film. I think this film does bring something to the table, but we can get to that later. I guess just to contextualize this, this movie was made as part of an international process to localize the film to an American audience.
Mm-hmm.
It was created by the unfortunately named, or at least started by the unfortunately named Manson International. No relation, of course.
Uh-huh.
And they got a contract together, and the contract was basically that they would create a version of the film that is narrated and dubbed in English and includes new scenes and reductions of other scenes. Like, it would basically be a complete re-edit from an American standpoint to make an American film out of it. And so that's what they did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They got Raymond Burr on the movie as the lead, Steve Martin, who's a reporter, and they inserted him into the film by way of actors pretending to be the characters of the movie and never facing the camera, so you can never tell the difference.
Yay.
Except you can. You can if you're not like blind by your inability to tell Asian people apart. I will say they are Asian American actors, not necessarily all Japanese, but they're all at least Asian American.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a Japanese playing Sherpa situation, at least.
That's something.
I actually will say they do a pretty good job of intersplicing the footage, as far as like in like putting in making Raymond Burr look like he's in the movie. They do a good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
He does look like he's in the movie. The people he's talking to do not look like the people he's supposed to be talking to, but he does look like he's in the movie.
I will say though, like, a lot of those scenes felt like they had the same vibe to me as, like, you know,
Monster from the Ocean Floor.
Well, no, like just bad Family Guy edits where they like edit themselves into scenes of like actual stuff, and it was.
Remember that time we were on Star Wars?
Yeah, pretty much. Like it just felt like.
Hey, Peter, remember that time you were in Godzilla?
Yeah, it really was just like. This guy who, like, okay, he's a reporter, so he has business being on the scene, but, like, he just feels so out of place.
His main job is to stand there and go, my Japanese is a little bit rusty. Do you mind translating for me?
Exactly. Well, and then, like, you know, 20 minutes...
halfway through the film, they're just like...
They're just like, all right, well, we've got an American with us, so everyone starts speaking English for the rest of the movie.
Well, like, and then he just disappears. Like, Steve Martin just disappeared. By the way, very funny that his name is Steve Martin. The comedian wasn't yet a big thing yet, but it's very funny still.
Yeah, no, this version of the film actually stars the famous movie star from Cheaper by the Dozen, like investigating Godzilla with his reporter skills.
Mm-hmm. Well, you say that, but actually what this movie stars is Perry Mason, Raymond Burr played Perry Mason, the old in the old law TV show, legal drama TV show. So it is a lawyer fighting Godzilla in a way.
Okay.
But he actually kind of disappears from the movie partway through, and it just plays the movie as it is mostly. This version of the film has a really strange habit of taking individual scenes and then cutting them just a little bit shorter on both ends of the scene. Like they cut off a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end, and a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end of the next scene. It's like it makes the whole movie like very slightly faster, but also it makes everything a little bit clipped, and it's really strange.
Yeah, like there are several like scenes that just end kind of abruptly,
including the ending.
Well, yeah, including the ending, where it's just like, you know, they finish their thought, like they finish the statement, but it like the statement is still hanging in the air by the time the next scene has started. And it's just kind of awkward.
And part of this is a symptom of the way they decided to dub this movie, or in this case, like the way they decided to not dub it. A lot of this movie is the intact audio from the original Godzilla film.
Yeah,
with other stuff put on top of it.
like this, the scenes where it's like the original Godzilla like scenes, and like when they splice the new scenes on top of it, you can it's subtle, but you can hear the difference of like, okay, this was clearly not part of the same recording.
Specifically in the Godzilla scenes when I almost said Aaron Burr, oh my god, Raymond Burr, when Steve Martin, Raymond Burr, is narrating Godzilla's rampage through Tokyo, if you listen carefully, you can hear the original soundtrack underneath the soundtrack that they have overlaid on top of it, because they're very slightly off sync from each other. Because they've cut so much of the footage that it's made the audio track slightly off sync with this continuous audio track that they're playing over all the scenes, to make it instead of having the music like continuously skip a couple seconds ahead every so often. It must have been very hard to do this, frankly. I feel like if they had just done a straight up dub, it would have been a lot easier.
Yeah, no. Like,
for one, they're recording new footage to put Raymond Burr in here.
They put so much effort into like localizing this, which is kind of impressive. It like they didn't need to do it, but they did.
Well, I'll say one thing on that. I have a quote here from Richard Kay, who was one of the people who worked on this. Richard Kay of Jewel Enterprises, one of the distributors here. And he says, "We weren't interested in politics, believe me." I don't know why he says that, but we only wanted to make a movie we could sell. At that time, the American public wouldn't have gone for a movie with an all-Japanese cast. That's why we did what we did. We didn't really change the story, we just gave it an American point of view. So that's their thinking, is that a Japanese cast is not going to sell in America
that
immediately after the war, or just because of the racism of the time.
Yeah.
You know.
That is a very interesting perspective that, like, it kind of didn't occur to me, because, like, as I was watching the movie, it just felt very, like, American studio sees this cool Japanese movie and they're like, cool, how can we like kind of make it ours? But no, like that's actually an interesting like way of looking at it. I don't know how accurate it is, but like,
yeah, I mean, I will say I feel like they wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for the purpose of making more money.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like just because of their own egos isn't really a good enough reason for them to go through all the effort of doing this whole like redesign. And an interesting thing to note is that Toho did have final approval on this. So Toho Studios did approve this at the end.
All right.
I don't know, how much they actually cared about it, frankly. This was before Toho was like a voracious, like a really stubborn protector of their IP. Godzilla wasn't an IP yet. Godzilla was one movie. And they really wanted the international distribution of the movie so that they could make a lot more money.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems. Yeah, it's just a money-making endeavor on both sides, I guess. Yeah.
Now, Ishiro Honda never actually saw this version of the film until it released in Japan. And then he was like, what the hell? Because the American version of the film, because it's so different from the Japanese version, did eventually show in Japan. I think it might have been in the 70s where it first showed in Japan. And it was like basically they had subtitles for all the English.
Yeah.
It's very funny that they're watching a subtitled version of a Japanese movie. But and Ishiro Honda was basically like, huh. But it's really strange that they went through all that work. And you know what? Honestly, Raymond Burr does a wonderful job. I think he does a great job as Steve Martin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't say that about any of the other actors from the American production, but yeah.
Like, I didn't really like the character personally, just because I was
What character?
I was so attached to the original. But for what there is of the character, like, the actor did a decent job at portraying him.
Like, Steve Martin is not really a character so much as he is a narrator that also happens to be inside the story.
Yeah, like he starts off as just sort of like this cynic, skeptic, like, I'm here to uncover a story, but like, there's no way that there's some giant monster doing this. These people are all crazy. And then he actually experiences it himself, and he's like, oh, okay, well, I happen to be deeply involved in the plot of this story at this point. And yeah, it's just kind of weird to me.
Yeah. But I think Raymond Burr does have enough of a gravitas to his voice, and he's a good narrator, and so it has its own charms, even though it kind of takes away from the original charms of the movie.
Yeah, he does have he does have really good narrator voice, like, which is probably why they picked him for the role.
Yeah, and you might notice that like some of his lines seem like pretty good, and then some of the lines that everyone else are saying are like pretty bad. And that's because Raymond Burr was like actively punching up his script to make it better.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of guy he is. He actually got really into Godzilla, and he became a big advocate for the Godzilla franchise as it developed. He's actually he was pretty cool as far as that goes.
I'm on board. I'm on board with that. He basically like got hired on as the bridgeway between Japan and America with this movie, and then after the movie is over, he just becomes like a Godzilla fan.
Yeah,
that's kind of cute.
And this won't be the last time we see him either.
Oh, nice.
He's gonna come back to Godzilla in about 30 years. And he's gonna be a lot older then, unfortunately. But another cool thing, while we're on the topic of Raymond Burr, he's we know he's Perry Mason, a very very famous character. So he was not a super well known, because he was still a TV actor for the most part. Like, or at least known as a TV actor. But he has a decent level of notoriety. And he actually there's two cool things about him in that respect. Is that one, he was actually like a kind of a he wasn't exactly, but he was kind of like a body positivity figure in the public, because he has a little bit of weight on him. He's a little bit chubby, and he would get made fun of this on this in like on like late night TV shows, Johnny Carson, the Carson Show, and he was like, he just would not show up on that show. He was just like, I'm not gonna go on a show with a guy who makes fun of me. Fuck that.
Hell yeah.
For my weight. Like, fuck that shit.
The more I hear about this guy, the more I kind of like him.
And 2, he was a closeted gay man.
Oh. Well, now
Yeah.
I really like him.
Yeah, he never came out publicly, but when he died, it came out. But yes, he was actually a gay man, which is actually kind of funny because, on Perry Mason, so he's the prosecutor. I hope I'm getting this right. And then his like rival was the defense attorney, who was like an effeminate like lawyer guy. So he plays this like stoic prosecutor, and then he's got he's the gay one, and the other guy's straight.
I mean, I guess it just goes to show that, like, since the very beginning, Godzilla has been for the gays.
True. But yeah, that's like where most of my praise for this movie goes to, is basically Raymond Burr specifically.
Okay.
I cannot say the same for anything else. The audio work is terrible, but the audio, I think it's very difficult. I like I said before.
Yeah. Like it takes it, like they're doing something that's so much effort when they could have just dubbed it instead.
In the modern day, what you could just do is you could just be sent the file, like the project file, and then you open it up on your computer, and then you remove all the original voice lines and then put in the new voice lines, and then have you can adjust everything in the program. But in this day, in 1956 or 55, when they were working on this, you would have had to. You'd have to do what they did here, which is you're taking these strips of film with the attached dialogue, and then you're putting the new dialogue over top of all that, and new dialogue and a new score, and you're having to like reduce the volume of parts of it in some ways, just to make it the way you want it to be. The easiest way to do this would just be to completely trim the dialogue and score entirely, and then redo it all. Because then you wouldn't have had to deal with all this. Well, yeah. That's easier in some ways. Easier in that it's a lot easier to get what you want out of it. But it's, you have to do a lot more re-recording instead of just laying things on top of the currently existing audio.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily take more or less effort. It'd just be like different effort.
Yeah. In some ways this is the lazy version, but in other ways it's just like a weirdly convoluted way of doing it. These actors are just kind of like they're people they had around. They're all being paid as extras. None of them appear on film. None of their faces appear on film except for a couple of characters that are new to the story. Because a lot of these people are being made to be the replacements for characters in the original film who obviously have not actually interacted with Raymond Burr ever. By the way, there's some heinous weirdness going on in the beginning of this film where they're cutting from Raymond Burr to Emiko.
Yeah.
where Raymond Burr is there and he's talking and he's saying things as Steve Martin, and then it cuts to Emiko and then she's being dubbed over, and it's like one or the other, please, one or the other. I can't handle this switching back and forth between the two.
Also, is it just me, or it kind of sounded like there were a few different dubs of Emiko? Like, one just sound like the one from the beginning just sounded like straight up an American voice, and like I swear, like parts throughout the movie, she's got like a bit of a thicker Japanese accent going. It could just be me, but like I feel like there's not just one dub for her. Maybe I'm totally making this up.
She's her dub actress is not credited, so I don't know.
Go watch the movie yourselves and comment back to us if you agree with my sentiment that I think there's more than one dub going on with Emiko.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised because the dubbing required for the entire film was recorded in under 5 hours.
Oh, okay.
James Hong and the other voice actors, including that would be Sammy Tong, were not actually given any details about the film or shown the film in any way. They were just locked in a room and told to read for every role, and then they picked the ones that were best fitting. So they didn't see the film as they were dubbing either. They just recorded the lines and then they placed them on top of everything. That's why nothing feels anything. They're all neutral. Every line read is like extremely neutral in tone.
Sounds like what Bethesda does with their voice actors. They're just given a script and be like, talk into a microphone. Okay, what's the context for what I'm saying? You don't need context.
It's yeah, I mean, there's not a lot here. Not a lot of money here, I should say, because a lot of the money is going to Toho for the rights to do the movie.
Yeah,
and a lot of the money is also going to promotion as well. They did a lot of promotion. There's a ton of radio ads. If you go online on YouTube, you can find the radio ads. I actually use them in my BRB playlist when I on my streams.
Nice.
And they this movie was aimed at kids a lot in America. Because there's some of those radio ads where there's like they get like a little kid on there and he goes, "Hey kids, Godzilla's totally cool and awesome."
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like and I think this is part of why they don't translate a lot of some of the darker scenes in the movie. Like the I don't know if we mentioned this last time, but the scene where the mother and her children are cowering in fear of Godzilla and saying, "We're going to go meet your father now."
I was thinking that too, like as we were watching the movie, I'm like, okay, so they made the decision to include this scene, but they didn't translate it.
They didn't translate the most important. Like the most important part is the fact that she's like
yeah. So to
saying they're gonna meet their father in heaven.
To some random American watching this film, they're just like, oh, the family cowering in fear, but like. The actual context of that family is actually pretty dark, and yeah,
and also you have to imagine that the husband was killed during the war.
Yeah,
like that's the implication. All references to atomic bombs, the bombing of Nagasaki, the Bikini Island test, all of it was gone. All that's cut out. I imagine some of it's still in the movie. It's just in Japanese, so no Americans can understand it. That aren't like learning Japanese for some reason. And this is 1950s. There aren't many of those.
Yeah, I mean probably be
A couple of servicemen who just came home
based
after getting a Japanese
like,
wife.
there's definitely gonna be like like former Japanese occupiers that have picked up some Japanese, but like
But they haven't had much time to get back home from occupation either.
yeah, so yeah, it's yeah.
It's mostly going to be people in like California, I would imagine, since there's a large
Mhm.
Japanese population in California at this time.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them lost their land during the war.
Yeah.
The internment camps were largely a land grab by which Japanese farmers' land was taken and then given to Americans because the Japanese farmers were better at farming
Mm-hmm.
and were out competing American farmers. But yeah, because of that, I imagine they were able to hide a lot in the Japanese audio
Yeah.
by just not translate it.
Yeah.
It's
like, there is some, like, they still do mention like nuclear testing and stuff, but like that's all they talk about. Is like the only mentions of the bombs are like, this is why Godzilla exists, because people are testing the H bombs or whatever.
Yeah, and they tried. We read that quote earlier, and no matter what they say about not being political, they absolutely cut out any mention of American involvement in the making of Godzilla.
Yeah.
They didn't name the Lucky Dragon, right? They like. I gotta say, speaking of I want to circle back to I had one really interesting plot thread. I was like exploring through this movie. This is like a weird crackpot theory, but I think Steve Martin and Security Officer Tomo are a love story for the ages.
Oh.
You remember Security Officer Tomo, right?
Yeah.
He's like kind of in the movie a little bit.
And then he kind of stops existing halfway through.
I think he's still there at the end of the movie. He just doesn't say anything anymore. I'm pretty sure he's in the same shots as Steve Martin, just kind of standing there awkwardly.
Well, he existed mainly for being a like on the spot translator, and then
an excuse for Steve Martin to get into places.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden people just started speaking English, and so he was just kind of like a side character at that point. Although he did play a bit of a role there towards the end, like when they were having that big meeting about like how are we gonna deal with Godzilla, and then Steve Martin comes out and he's like having to write his report for back in the States, and then the guy comes out and he's like, why did he leave? And here we've got a plan. We're gonna like put this electric barrier around the city, and it's gonna stop Godzilla. Totally, it's gonna work. I promise. But that's the last moment I remember him being of any significance.
It's possible that he wasn't on the boat, and I'm just misremembering. It's possible he died in the collapse when the building that Steve Martin's in collapses. It's possible that they imply he dies there. I don't know, but Steve Martin and Security Officer Tomo forever. Steve Martin hugs Officer Tomo in the rainstorm to prevent him from flying away. They have a lot of buddy conversations, and Steve Martin likes to like grab his shoulder like they're old pals, even though they just met. I think they have about as much chemistry as any other love interest we've watched in this entire podcast, except for Emiko and Ogata.
Yeah.
So as far as American films go, and Raymond Burr's a gay man, maybe he was sneaking something in. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to touch the guy's shoulder.
Yeah.
That's my Fujoshi headcanon right there.
Yeah, we've again, going back to my statement earlier, Godzilla from their very beginning was for the gays.
Unless he killed Tomo, in which case Godzilla is actually a homophobe.
Yeah. Fair point.
I gotta say these I I, I gotta go back to these actors, these, because like these guys stink on ice. I can't decide which is worse, the dub actors or the actors. I think it's the dub actors. The dub actors I think
Hmm.
are worse than the
Yeah.
actors who are just portraying in characters in the newly recorded footage. It's just that the new actors don't look like the characters are supposed to be, if they're supposed to be a character. Like that,
Hmm.
they don't look like them. Uh Especially Sarazawa. The guy who is playing Sarazawa in the phone call scene does not look like him at all. It's
Hmm.
crazy. But the voice actor playing dubbing over Dr. Yamane is like really bad.
Hmm.
Stupendously bad. He can't even say the word phenomenon. He keeps saying phenomenon.
uh,
Phenomenon.
yeah.
He also is called a brontosaurus a bondosaurus. It's like they recorded in 5 hours. They didn't have time to do retakes, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
There's also some weird like errors in the translation. They called, like, when they do that scene with the trilobite in the
Hmm.
previous film. Well, in the original dialogue, they say trilobite. It's a three-lobed arthropod.
Yeah.
In this one, they say it's a three-winged worm.
Yeah, I was I heard that too, and I was like, huh, okay,
What the
sure.
fuck does that mean? It's just like a bad translation of the Japanese. I assume they just
Hmm.
translated arthropod to worm somehow. They translated lobed to winged, and then they got the three part right.
Yeah. I mean, well, Google Translate wasn't as refined as it is now.
We get some other good lines, like Sarazawa saying, "Steve, you're a better newspaper man than a linguist," which is funny because I think Raymond Burr's Japanese is just as good as any of the Asian American actors that he plays alongside. Some of those Asian American actors are very clearly second generation, and they have not spoken a word of Japanese their entire life. Like, you notice that too, right?
Yeah. Ugh.
It's like they got these Japanese guys up here, but they cannot speak. Like, they're just like stumbling through Japanese, going like, sayonara. It is Steve Martin, desu ka?
Not that any of the American people watching will notice.
No, but if you've studied Japanese even as little as I have, you'll notice it.
Yeah.
It's just amusing, honestly. It's not a huge problem. It's just amusing.
Hmm.
It's not nearly as much of a problem as the way that they dub in lines that aren't there.
Hmm.
I don't know if you noticed this as much as I did, um, but like there, in particular, the scene where Dr. Yamane is like sad about them trying to kill Godzilla, and he's sitting in the dark,
Yeah.
and then Emiko comes in and turns on the light, and then she's like, "Are you okay?" And then he's like, "Leave me alone. Turn off the light, please." And then she turns off the light and leaves. Instead, he's like, "I don't like this. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's good. Leave me
Hmm.
alone." And he says like five different things instead of the two different things that he says in the previous thing. And so he's just like constantly talking the entire time, not leaving any silence at all. And so
Yeah.
but he's talking so much that they miss the part where he asks Emiko to turn off the light, and so she just turns off the light without being asked to. And it feels like she's like, "Okay, go to bed, old man."
Yeah. Well, I like, and part of that is kind of a localization. Like, a lot of American films with storytelling feel that they need to say so much. This is
Hmm.
why we have a problem with too much exposition in like all of our media.
Like
Um,
every movie we've watched previously has a problem of not being able to shut up and let the movie tell the story.
yeah,
Let the moving pictures tell the story.
and like, with the original Godzilla, it was like a lot of the scenes with silence were like telling just as much as the scenes with dialogue. And then this is just kind of like, there was too much silence in that scene. Let's add more dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because, without that, you don't understand his motivation, right? Or you don't understand why he's sad, right?
How could you ever tell how he's sad by the way he acts and what he reacts to? What do you think this is? Some kind of Kuleshov effect?
No,
folks, if you don't know Kuleshov effect, go back a couple of episodes. We explained it there.
Yeah, he has to go full in like, I am sad because they are killing Godzilla. Why can't they just keep him like, and we study him, because we shouldn't be doing this. Go away.
And also he's got like a little bit of a Brooklyn accent too. I don't know if you noticed. This is Dr. Yamane has a little bit of a Brooklyn accent.
I didn't notice that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, you could really. I heard it come through like every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
It was like every once in a while Joey Wheeler just popped through the screen at me.
It
wasn't like
Red Eyes Black Dragon.
It wasn't like dinosaurs or something like that. It wasn't that strong, but occasionally you would get like a Y when it in like an I situation, you would get like a Y instead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another place where the new dub doesn't work is with Serizawa specifically. They've done a lot to tie Raymond Burr to Serizawa, tie Steve Martin's character to Serizawa. They're old friends. That's the reason why he's coming to Japan is to do a story on Serizawa.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna meet up, but they can't because Serizawa's busy. He was out of town. What? Wait, hold up. Serizawa's out of town. He's in the original movie, he's like a shut-in mad scientist who hasn't like left his basement in forever. But here he's just like he's gallivanting around. He was doing field work. Is said. They say he's doing field work. What? What field work?
Well, he's working. He's doing his research out in public.
Was he fucking
he's doing
setting
this
off
research.
Oxygen destroyers in public?
He's doing
like
this
out in the wild
that he's trying to keep as secret as possible out in public.
And also Steve at the beginning of the movie says that like Serizawa is a scientist that other scientists have been saying is doing some crazy experiments. No. How? What? Serizawa doesn't talk to anyone. Oh, and the person who meets Steve Martin is Serizawa's assistant. He has an assistant?
The guy that's trying to be secretive about his research that could destroy the world.
He has an assistant, and he gossips to his scientist friends about the work that he's doing, and he does his experiments in public where the chain reaction could do whatever the fuck it wants. Instead of in a controlled environment where he could control the chain reaction of the oxygen destroyer. Like like I hate to be fucking CinemaSins ding, but like ding 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 ding. There's nothing makes sense here. You can't just change things like this without considering how they actually impact the plot. Because now Serizawa doesn't make any goddamn sense as a character. Yeah. And he's the most important part of the movie.
Like he's still because he still has his big speech of like why he doesn't want to give up his research to help destroy Godzilla. It's because
that's the part of the movie they didn't change at all.
Yeah.
That's like the one part of the movie where it's just like Steve Martin is gone from the movie for like a solid like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just the normal movie for a while, except dubbed.
Also, by the way, like side note, when he was saying, like when he was talking to Emiko about like well, when she opened up to him about the fact that Serizawa had like this thing that she couldn't talk about that could potentially stop Godzilla, and
Oh yes.
and then like she just kind of opens up to this random reporter that she barely knows.
Yeah, that's like a friend of her estranged fiance.
She wouldn't tell her dad. No, she kept her tight lips around her dad, but this random guy, I guess I should spill the beans. And
then he's the one that convinces her to go to Serizawa instead of it being an internal conflict of her having to be like, okay, I have to tell Ogata about this. And then we have to go and tell Serizawa.
But also, like, I was kind of half expecting when Steve Martin says, like, have me talk to him, I could convince him, or something like that.
Would.
I was half expecting that they were just going to cut him into those scenes. And he would just be in the background, standing in the background. Yeah.
Standing in the background smoking a pipe could be the subtitle of this movie.
Yeah, thankfully that didn't happen, because it
would have been even sillier.
It would have taken away from the scene, but like
there's a lot that takes away from. There's not a lot of adding to in this movie. I think the one thing that is added to is Raymond Burr specifically. I think again he does a great job. I think his narration of the destruction of Tokyo is actually quite interesting. I don't like it better necessarily, but I like it in a different way.
Yeah.
Everything else is just like it is subtraction. Like, there's literal subtraction too, where they are actively taking away some scenes from this movie. Like they're trying to think of like a good one that's like just literally gone from the movie. There's like lots of scenes have had like I said, the beginnings and the ends chopped off. That makes things a little bit awkward.
Well, so one thing, like,
we lost the scene explaining why the boy from Odo Island followed Yamane back to Japan.
Well, yeah, another one that I was thinking of, like, you know, the scene that I was talking about when during last episode when we were talking about the original, like, the scene that struck with me towards the beginning when we saw like all those families worried about their loved ones that perished on the ship. That's gone, and it's actually replaced with, I don't know if we should tell the public about this.
It's replaced with a boring ass scene of Steve Martin going, I'm gonna report this on the news.
Yeah. Yeah, like this. They completely replaced the whole like moving, like, I don't know the names or faces of any of these well, I know the faces. I don't know the names of any of these characters, and I will never see them again for the rest of the movie, but I care about their plight because they lost a family member on that ship. And now it's just like, well, you know, that sucked. Should we tell the public about this? What do you think, Steve Martin? Should we tell the public about this?
I'm a reporter, and I'm going to say it like it is. It's not good. But it's still a good movie because it's still fucking Godzilla at the end of the day.
Yeah, like
it's just like it just feels like if Godzilla was King Kong, a little bit.
Yeah, kind of. And there were some moments where it, like, maybe not as heinously as with some of the other movies we saw, like with King Kong, and, you know, where, like, there was some very clear blatant racism going on, but there was like sort of that criticism of like those islanders and their superstition, and like, oh well, they don't know what they're talking about. Oh, they think it's a giant monster. Ha! No way it's a giant monster, those superstitious nonsense speakers.
If he saw a monster, he's had too much sake.
Yeah.
That's a real line that Steve Martin says. And then the security officer guy, Tomo, who's with him, is like, no, it's not sake. It's just that they're too superstitious and stupid.
Yeah. It's not to this. It's not to like the same degree of like blatant racism, but there is a little bit of like belittling going on here.
It feels more like the monster from the ocean floor, where it's like, oh, the natives are right about the mythological beast, kinda, but not for the reason that they think they are.
Yeah. It's more just like if anything, it's kind of the cynic versus the like spiritualist. Like the spiritualists have this tradition that's going way back about Godzilla and this like monster that like they have to make sacrifices to otherwise he'll destroy them. And then like we've just got the cynics, which are really just like the big city folk that live in Tokyo. They're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Why would people believe this nonsense?
And meanwhile, the original Godzilla film plays that same angle, but leaves it more ambiguous, which I think is a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
While we're here in this scene, though, by the way, the old man still is speaking in Japanese. They don't dub over him, except for the parts where he says Gojira, and instead they had someone go like, Godzilla!
Yeah.
And it sounds insane. It's so bad.
Yes.
It's basically exactly that tone. It's like, Godzilla! He's like talking in Japanese, kind of like this, and then he says, Godzilla!
Yeah, the dubbing in take your stereotypical bad dubbing and that's
forget
kind of
that.
just
it's worse than that. It's like it's like a person who doesn't know how to dub did a dub.
Well, or no, like
because they didn't want to commit to a full dub.
Yeah. Actually, no. What it's like is like I don't even know a good specific example of this, but like scenes like, you know, clips of movies where someone says something and then like someone's making a meme about it, and so they just do a voiceover like of this one specific word the person says. Like,
yeah, you've seen this in YouTube videos, I'm sure, where like someone will do like a blah 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 blah. It just has a completely different cadence and energy. It's ADR. It's like weird ADR instead of dubbing. For those instances. But no, they didn't like care. It really feels like they didn't care to make it sound better.
Yeah.
But they clearly cared to make the movie scenes look like they fit in, which is interesting. It's interesting what they prioritize. I wonder how much influence that was Raymond Bird wanting to make it look good. And he just doesn't have control over how it sounds, you know. Not that he had much control over how it looked, because he's not the director or anything. He's just one of the actors. But you know, his influence, I wonder if he was able to shift things.
Also, like, slight change of topic here. Something that struck me from just the way the movie opened is like we open with a very different tone shift from like what the original movie was, because the original, kind of like we said, had that sort of like mystery build up and at first where it's like basically just them at the start, where it's like, oh, some weird thing is happening and we don't know what it is until there's the big reveal that it's Godzilla. And this movie just straight up opens with like, you know, in the or like after the destruction has already happened, and we've got the narration going like, Godzilla did this to us. he didn't say Godzilla, but like just
No,
like a monster did this to Tokyo, and
this is Tokyo, you know.
yeah, and it's just like, okay, cool. I guess there's not going to be as much suspense because we kind of
You don't
know
ever
what's
see
going
the
to
monster.
happen. Yeah, like
They don't mention the monster.
They don't. Well, no, I think they do.
At least they don't mention
the
the name of the monster. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't like get into specifics.
Yeah, they don't mention the name, but they do mention like a thing destroyed Tokyo, and it still has a little bit of mystery to it, but like it doesn't have the same build up.
And then Steve Martin looks to the camera and says, "Hey there, I bet you're wondering how I got here."
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Yeah. This is me. You're probably wondering.
This is me, Steve Martin, reporter. I bet you're wondering how I got here.
Yeah.
This is me, Sonic the Hedgehog. I bet you're wondering how I got here. Yeah, it's weird. I don't like it. The shuffling around of things in this film is not great.
And like I will say, if it like I don't hate the opening on the destruction of Tokyo.
No,
it's very different from what the original was going for, but it's not like a bad decision necessarily. I just didn't like the exposition being a part of it.
Yeah, well,
Like,
and also I don't like the I feel like Ishiro Honda turned in a near perfect project, and every change you make to it makes it kind of fall apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's not much you can do about that except for not change it like this. But you know,
yeah, like the original opens with the destruction of that ship, and like that's an exciting hook. It's an exciting hook, and it's also a very intentional decision that this is what brings us into the story. Is like
the lucky dragon.
Yeah, it's the lucky dragon, and meanwhile, this version is like, well, that's not good enough. We gotta show Tokyo in flames.
We gotta fucking shoot our load and just show you the Eiji Tsuburaya effects right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah. They at least keep the opening footsteps intact. And they keep Akira Ifukube's effects or sound intact. His music is still in here, so it still sounds great as far as that goes. You'll be wishing for it come the American version of Raids Again, because there a lot of other dub productions, what they would have done is, like I said earlier, just clear the entire audio track and then do it themselves. And they might not grab the sound from Toho Studios to use their music tracks. They might just get some of the canned music they have in storage from their other film productions.
Yeah.
Or licensed music that they've bought the license for. And we might be seeing that in a couple episodes' time when we watch the American version of Godzilla Raids Again.
I'm not looking forward to that because, honestly, like, while I was watching this movie, I was criticizing a lot of the changes it made, but at the same time, like, there were still several moments where I was just vibing to the movie and loving the music.
Yeah. Like, it knew to keep that music, because that music is what makes Godzilla. But the next Godzilla Raids Again is a much cheaper dub process. It is just a regular dub, though. They do make changes, but they didn't record new scenes for it, as far as I know. They do significant heavy edits to it, though. So that's why we're going to do a separate episode for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to add to this. Like,
well, how about anything you noticed on the second watch through? Basically, like it was something that you didn't notice for the first time through, but you noticed on the second time round.
Well, one thing I noticed, and I mentioned this to you as we were watching, is that when Godzilla does his, like, what's it called? Is that the Corona beam that he's doing?
No, the Corona Beam is
Okay.
something Space Godzilla does. We're going to be covering
Okay.
that when we get to the 90s
All right. So that's
or
just like
late 80s.
like a fire beam or something.
It's his atomic breath.
Atomic breath, that's what it's called. Okay. Yeah, no, when he's doing his atomic breath, his spines light up, and I think it's actually kind of super cool. It's
Yeah,
a
I
neat
think
effect.
in this early film, I think it's just supposed to be fire breath. That's
Mhm.
radioactive in nature, but eventually we're just going to start calling it his like atomic breath. You know, it becomes it is still nuclear fire, but it becomes less fire like with time.
Mhm.
Until we get later in the series where they kind of bring it back to that fiery roots.
Mhm.
In this one, it kind of looks like steam sometimes. I imagine they kind of used steam to make the effect work.
Mhm.
Because in this one, it's practical. At least not all practical. Some of it's not practical. Some of it is practical, I believe.
Mhm.
Later films, we're going to be using crayons, not literally crayons. No, what we're doing is we're
Mhm.
drawing it, creating an
Okay.
animation layer on top of the film layer
Mhm.
to animate in the effects like that, and it'll be pretty clear when that happens.
Mhm.
But that's how they do the effect with the back fins as well.
Yeah.
It's just them drawing on the back fins basically,
Mhm.
just a little bit of animation.
Nice.
Wait, I just realized, did they cut the stop motion animation scene of Godzilla's tail smacking into something? I think they did in this version.
Um,
I don't remember seeing that.
no, I think it's still in there.
Was it in there?
I remember seeing his tail knock over like a building or something.
It's funny. I haven't actually seen the American version of Godzilla in quite some time.
Mhm.
At least not like with my full attention. I haven't watched it. Like once I saw the Japanese version, I basically stopped watching the American version.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um, but yeah, this was the version that I knew for a while though.
Hmm.
We didn't get the Japanese version of the film in America until 2006.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we just had the American version. If we had the American version, I mean, it took a while for it to actually like get onto a platform that we could
Mhm.
watch at home without it being like, and like with Godzilla, the original Godzilla being the most grim of the Godzilla movies, it doesn't get as much like TV play
Uh-huh.
as like the cheesier ones do, or the more kid oriented ones. It would be
Mhm.
a kinder
Yeah.
way to put it. And so you don't have a lot of ways to watch it, but when you do, it's the American form, it's the American version. So
Mhm.
I only knew the American version until I don't think I got it when it first came out on DVD either. I might have, but I think I didn't have it on. I think I didn't have the Japanese version until quite a while, like maybe until I was like a teenager at least. So yeah, I for a while the original Godzilla was not one of my favorite Godzilla movies because I only had this lesser version of it.
Mhm.
It does remind me a lot of the American films we've been watching up until this point, which is why they're important context.
Yeah.
The dub of Godzilla is made the way it is because it's responding to the American transfer monster movies at the same time.
Mhm.
And so it does remind me a lot of these other American films we've been watching, which are not nearly as interesting as the original Godzilla film.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if like the people who do critiques of the original Godzilla and like are wrong about it were watching the American one and it didn't let them like truly sink into it, or if it's just that they're so embarrassed about the idea of liking a Godzilla movie that they have to, you know, say bad things about it instead. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
don't know. It's a good question. I will say another thing just from rewatching the film basically is like it still hit me equally as hard the scene with the girls choir.
You know what
Like
hit me this time? Oh, go ahead. Go. Keep on.
yeah, no, just like yeah, like there were a few scenes where like the way this movie was cut and the way this movie was dubbed, it did kind of take away a little bit. But I
particularly
feel like,
the oxygen destroyer scene, the
yeah,
reveal of it.
yeah, for sure. But like the girls' choir scene, it felt, I don't know if it was perfectly untouched, but it felt very untouched, and
Yeah, I would say so.
It felt like it had the same exact impact that it had the first time around.
Yeah. It didn't exactly for me, but that's only because I literally watched it a couple weeks ago
Mm-hmm.
with you, and
Yeah.
I've also seen this movie 5 million times. So because of that confluence of events, it didn't hit nearly as hard, but it still is really good.
Mm-hmm.
This time I got hit by a new scene I've never actually like really thought about as much. The scene where everyone's cheering for the jets attacking Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
That one I was like weirdly like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. This monster just like completely destroyed all these people's homes and killed like however many of the people that they knew. And they're all like gathered on the shore watching the jets fight Godzilla and like cheering. And it's just weirdly heartwarming, the people coming together against like a being that is the atomic bomb like that.
Yeah.
Although then in this version of the film, it feels like because of the way they've edited it to make it slightly shorter, it feels like the jets are what chase Godzilla off instead of Godzilla just deciding to leave
Mm-hmm.
while with the jets chasing him,
Yeah. Um.
which feels very American, by the way.
Yeah.
Of course, you can scare Godzilla off with jets. Why wouldn't you be able to?
Yeah. Also, like, one last thing that struck me that I didn't really notice the first time around, just because I wasn't paying as close attention, um, was with the very ending, um, like right after they set off the oxygen destroyer, and like Emiko and I can't remember his name. Her love
Ogata?
interest. Yeah, Ogata. Like they both have this expression of like it's a very they're very clearly experiencing complex emotions here because like on one hand the day is saved and Godzilla is no more and they can breathe a sigh of relief, but on the other hand they just lost someone that was dear to them.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can see that mix of emotions on especially Ogata's face. Like his actor did such a good job just like portraying sort of like the mix of shock and relief and like
Yeah. Especially because like the words were imparted to him,
mm-hmm.
and Serizawa made sure to save him.
Yeah.
And like Ogata doesn't know Serizawa very well.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows that Serizawa is the one who saved them too.
Yeah.
It is very powerful. And also those underwater scenes, because of the lack of picture clarity, they feel very ethereal in a way.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a voyage into hell rather than a voyage into the water.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like is fitting for Godzilla.
Yeah, for sure.
Another thing I noticed this time around is that the issue with the hand puppet. I finally figured out what the issue with the hand puppet is. It's specifically the eyes.
Yeah.
Those eyes suck. Except when they're blacked out. I think there's 2 different puppets or something, and on one of them the eyes are blacked out, and those look fine. But the eyes that have like little googly eyes, they get like off kilter, and it's that's the whole ball game. And then it looks like a silly goofy puppet. It looks like it's gonna eat a bunch of cookies.
It is kind of hard to take Godzilla seriously when he's got googly eyes glued to his face.
Num 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 num. You love cookie.
Yeah.
Me love train.
But yeah, no, I get that. I see it. It's It's not a perfect effect by any
No.
means.
It is easily the worst one in the whole movie. Oh, speaking of horrible things, there's a bunch of screams that are thrown in the movie, like that aren't from the original movie. They're just being put in. They're like stock scream sound effects that were a part of the studio's sound effects library, and they suck.
None of them
One
were
of them was
Wilhelm
like
screams, were they?
What?
None of them were Wilhelm screams, though, were they?
No, none of them were Wilhelm screams, unfortunately.
It would have been funny if one of them was, but yeah.
I think, yeah. I don't know if they would have had the Wilhelm scream in their library of sounds. I don't know how widespread that was outside of that studio we were watching before that had it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Warner Brothers? Obviously, it was outside of Warner Brothers at some point eventually, because that one guy on the Star Wars set used it. But
yeah, I think it was Warner Brothers. It might have been. Was that Mighty Joe Young?
I think Mighty Joe Young had it, and then another movie we watched had it too.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one though.
Go back and re-listen to the episodes and
yeah, go listen to every single episode and then tell us which one it was. Speaking of little things, Steve, I think, had dog tags on him. We briefly got a shot of him shirtless, and he had like a little necklace that had something on it at the end, and I think it was dog tags, which I guess is implying that Steve Martin was like in the war. Maybe he was like a war reporter or something, which explains why he sticks around when Godzilla attacks.
Yeah, but it was kind of hard to tell. Like, the scene didn't really focus on it, but like it was there, and this
you have to imagine it was intentional in some way.
Yeah, like there's no way that wasn't intentional, but like I'm not sure what it's trying to say. Like if it was dog tags, it's pretty obvious what it's trying to say, but if it yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would have to rewatch it to analyze that specific
I don't think so.
But like, yeah.
I mean, we are going to rewatch it though, is the thing. We've got one more watch of this, the Italian version. The last line I think is an interesting one. I think this is another Raymond Burr ad lib. The menace was gone, but so was a great man. The whole world could wake up again and live again. I misplaced where the and was there. I think that's a neat line. It's not great, but it's neat.
Yeah.
It is weird though that there's no like warning or anything. There's no lessons to be learned here. It's just look at this horrible thing that happened to Japan.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that nothing could have stopped this.
It's like that's basically the vibe that I got from the very opening is like, this is probably the direction that we're going with, is like, oh, this huge monster destroyed Tokyo, and so we've got to stop it. And like, that's the lesson to be learned from the movie, is that a giant
you got to stop things when bad things happen.
Yeah, just you have to stop giant monsters.
But never take any preemptive measures to make sure they don't happen in the first place.
Yeah, no, like there's
nothing we could have done.
Yeah, but you know, if there's one thing we can do is vengeance.
Keep making nukes. Simple as. Yeah, I guess this is a good point to start talking about the themes, because we're about done here, and I think that's the last thing we do all the time is talk about the themes.
Yeah.
But we did talk about the themes last time, so I guess really the more poignant question is, did the themes change at all this time?
Yeah, and like
kinda
a little bit. Like, again,
we've shifted the blame away from America, and that's about it.
Yeah, we've shifted the blame, and they did. Like, we kind of already addressed this, but like they did completely change up apart from the part that they didn't change, they changed the whole, like, we can't let this oxygen destroyer get into the hands of other people. Because clearly he wasn't being careful about making sure that no one would find out about his research, but at the same time he was. The movie's not very clear about that.
It's bizarre. It's really strange. But I just don't think it was really they were really thinking about that. They just wanted to connect Steve Martin into the plot somehow.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, removing any mentions of America from the plot is an active choice that they made.
Yep. Well, remember, this movie's not political.
No, it's not political.
They're just making their decisions for money making and no other reason.
Absolutely. There's nothing political about making money, don't you know?
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, there is a lot less talk about nuclear stuff other than the little bit where it's like H-bombs are the reason this guy exists.
Yeah, it's like it's got strontium 40 on it, so it's probably nuclear.
Yeah. Actually, to that degree, it strikes me very similar to, which movie was it? The
Monster from the Ocean Floor?
Yeah, I think it was Monster from the Ocean Floor, where there was basically just like a brief mention of the
creature was made by nuclear testing.
Yeah.
Anyways.
or
like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, where the nuclear test woke it up, and that's about it.
Yeah.
It's like in that one, it didn't even give it any powers.
Yeah.
At least in this one, it gave it firepower.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this one. Yeah. It didn't it deleted a lot of the theme about like nuclear testing and stuff and like why it's bad. And yeah, I don't know. There's not much else. I guess another thing would be sort of like how this movie approaches Godzilla as sort of being akin to natural disasters. Just because I feel like Steve Martin, like the focus being shifted towards Steve Martin and his perspective, like he didn't seem as engaged with like natural disasters as a thing to worry about, or like he was there during the storm, but like he was just kind of there.
Yeah,
he was there for the plot.
He's just kind of there for a lot of the movie.
Yeah,
he's just like there in the background smoking a pipe.
Yeah,
and I think again that's really just the subtitle of the movie: in the background smoking a pipe.
Yeah, like he genuinely is like he doesn't really count as a main character. Like he does, but he doesn't. Because if you think about it, like he only moves the plot forward because they changed the story so he would.
Yeah.
And
Emiko's not really a main character anymore either because they've removed her agency.
Yeah, she's just kind of there too, and their paths just sort of like happen to overlap.
And so now there's like kind of no main character, and you're just kind of waiting for Godzilla to show up.
Yeah.
Which feels like how an American would make a Godzilla film, so.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's exactly what the American Godzilla films feel like.
Yeah, like, because just, like, the scene where he was talking about, like, where Steve Martin was talking about Emiko and the love triangle, just was just it felt like he was describing the main characters of the movie, or like the main characters of the original movie, and just like, oh yeah, I happen to be involved with all three of these people and they happen to be in a love triangle, ha ha, how silly is that? And it just felt, yeah, it's like we're following the path of a side character when the actual main plot is happening elsewhere.
Well, like I said earlier, we're following the path of the narrator who is also in the story for some reason.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have that quote. It was the usual triangle, only this time it was to play a part in the lives of millions of people. Insane line. Just like, yeah, it's just some love triangle. Anyways, this is about millions of lives.
Uh-huh.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
Like, we just watched the same movie again, but, you know, with fundamental differences. And I think that's really what it is. Like, it is still the same movie. So there's a lot of the same good stuff in here. It's just they've changed some of the fundamentals of the movie to make it worse than what it should be.
And yeah, they changed, like, the changes they made affected the flow and the pacing and, like, kind of like the overall theme of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was still enjoyable. It just wasn't. It doesn't quite hold up to the original.
Yeah. And, you know, I imagine neither will the Italian version that we're about to watch next time. If I remember correctly, the Italian version is made from the same... Yeah, it is made from the same film that the Americans had. So it's Godzilla King of the Monsters instead of Gojira. But then with further edits and then colorized. And then it looks like it's going to have a new soundtrack too, potentially.
Okay.
It's going to be dubbed in Italian. So we're going to have subtitles for that. But yes, next time we'll be watching Godzilla, named after the man who brought it into reality, Cozy.
Huh. All right. Well, I look forward to it.
Yes, and we'll explain why it exists when that time comes. So look forward to that next time. For now, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. If you could give us a review on iTunes or share this with your friends or go to the YouTube page, thempodian, and give it a like and subscribe to the channel, we'd really appreciate it. That's the best way to help this grow and get the word out there to more people. The stats have been going up a little bit, so I'm really, really appreciative of that, and I hope that you can keep spreading the word. Haru, where can people find you?
I am Haru Hayes, a puppy girl VTuber who streams rarely. I stream like once a week-ish. You can find me, Haru Hayes, pretty much everywhere on social media. I stream on Twitch. Blue Sky, my handle is haru.vspire.live. And other than that, you just find me around. I'm on Discord and stuff, Yeah.
That's true. As for me, you can find me at Vampire Ian on everywhere. On YouTube, that's the channel where I do Yu-Gi-Oh! And Lestral's videos, TCG content in general. And I, do a lot of video essays as well. You can find me at Tomb of Vampire Ian for my Let's Plays and VODs. And then you can find me at thempodian for all podcasts, including this one. So if you're looking for a YouTube form of this podcast, there you go. Otherwise, you find us on all podcast apps. I think that's it from us. So I guess for the second time in a row, we shall say goodbye to Godzilla. Sayonara, Godzilla.
Sayonara, Godzilla.
And sayonara, Perry Mason.